Hello, all. I welcome all of you to this annual Mystico conference, Mysticon. So, we do this conference all the time, all the years. So, if you wish to be a part of it, of course, you can reach out to the admin, which is Mr. Melvin. So the topic that I have chosen for the talk is MSSQL-Attacker, which is a tool that helps you do the red team engagement, or it just does the MSSQL attack during a red team engagement or assessment. So before moving ahead, I would really like to express my sincere gratitude to the organizer of this virtual conference, of course, Mr. Melvin. It was a well planned and smoothly executed event that allowed us to connect and learn from each other. Thank you really very much for this hard work and dedicated in setting up this entire virtual platform and ensure that everything ran smoothly. Your efforts are really appreciated, and thank you once again for your valuable contribution for this mystical community and this knowledge sharing session. So that's being said, let's move ahead with our talk. So, a quick profile introduction. Who am I? So, Rikun Sindwar is my name. I'm a full-time red teamer at work. So, I do all the red team engagement, working for those critical vulnerabilities with the Mitre framework and so on and so forth. I do instructions. Basically, I do train people for the corporate as well as I do have a dedicated site, or I can say I do even share those knowledge over YouTube and other platform with the name Robensive. So if you get anything that says Robensive, yeah, it's me. Independent researcher. So I do a little bit of research and I have a couple of articles on Pentest magazine. Tools, scripts, malware, and those things I do develop. OSEP, OSWE, and CPS are the certificates basically that I have earned so far, and couple of CVs that I already have related to, of course, my cybersecurity career. So if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me over LinkedIn with the link specified here, or Twitter, of course, and the GitHub for all my tools, scripts, and malware things if you really wish to go and check out. So that's being said, let's move ahead with the next slide. So the agenda for this talk would be 100% MS SQL Server attacks. Of course, the dedicated for or dedicated to MS SQL. So we're gonna learn exploitation of MS SQL Server within an Active Directory environment, which you will get usually in a particular organization when you do the red team assessment or engagements. Well-known attacks on MS SQL Server like UNC hijacking, also known as UNC PATH injection, privilege escalation, SA impersonate, system admin basically, database owner or DBO impersonation, link server misconfiguration, and gaining code execution or command execution over the MS SQL server or over the MS SQL link server. Everything will be with the practical approach using my own tool, which is MSSQL-Attack. So you can say a video guide for that entire tool and their functionality. So that being said, let's ahead with the next slide. Before moving ahead, there are some essential topic that I would like to add here, and the first and foremost is MS SQL Server. This is important to move ahead with the further topic, and if you are not really aware against the same, I would recommend to go and check out more information against the same, of course. And that's being said, let's move ahead. So Microsoft SQL Server or MS SQL Server is a relational database management system developed by Microsoft. Basically, it will have the table structure and objects and all so on thing. And it is a software product with the primary function of storing and retrieving data as requested by other software applications. So when required, your web application can communicate to your database server in order to retrieve or store a particular data. Can run either on a same computer or another computer across the network. So if you don't really want your MS SQL server to be uh, to allow a remote connection, you can just run locally. However, we'll be focusing on the network part. So this is something like how you access HTTP server or any other server, right? So it is also something that can be served over the network using the TCP ports, of course. That being said, let's move ahead with the next slide. Another essential topic is Active Directory. Active Directory is important to know a bit for this talk, but it is not something that is 100% required. So you should be aware with the concept of Active Directory, and that should be sufficient. So Active Directory is a database again or a directory and set of services that connects user with the network resources that they need to get their work done. So it can be user, it can be machine, and if that particular user need to have access to any of the service or network resources, Active Directory will help them to authorize and authenticate. And also it offers few of the services that helps doing the same. Contains critical information about your environment, including users, computers, that they are allowed to do what. So example, a standard user will not gonna have permission of doing administrative rights and so on and so forth. This is something used dedicated, I would say, for authentication and authorization purpose with some additional functionality that helps for multiple stages. So you can still learn more about Active Directory, but this information would be sufficient. So just go dig in about the same and should be fine and fair enough. That being said, let's move ahead with another slide. The third essential here is the connection between MS SQL and Active Directory. So not a straight connection, of course, but MS SQL Server often used and found uh, by large organization and their server are under Active Directory environment. So if you do consider any large organization, they must be using this Active Directory environment and features, of course. And MS SQL is something you will find there for storing their data and so on. There are other servers as well, but we are just talking dedicated to the MS SQL. Active Directory allows user to authenticate to the service, and MS SQL is one of them. So user, it will gonna have an object of a particular user, and that user will gonna have different rights, and one of the right would be to have access or delegation right to particular MS SQL service or MS SQL server, right? So when AD allows a specific account to access to the my MS SQL service instance and that account is compromised, the further exploit would be possible. So when the AD, of course, uh, allows to access a particular user to have access to this MS SQL service instance, then and let's say that account is compromised, then all the attacks which we will be looking and practically approaching later on, that will be of course that will be something possible, right? Usually MS SQL service authenticated accounts are Kerberos stable and the password often crackable. So based on my experience, MS SQL service, they just allow a misconfigured to have a Kerberos table, and when it is Kerberos table, they can of course find their hashes, and those hashes could be crackable, right? So that being said, well, it's under Active Directory. It's quite easy to link UAT and production server. When in organization there are two different type of server, UAT, which is under development of course, and the production, which is live. So often those UAT database server and production server are linked to each other, and with help of this Active Directory it's easy. I'm not saying that without Active Directory it's not possible at all, but when we are using Active Directory it makes it quite easier than the other one. So let's move ahead with the next slide. The next thing that is essential for the stock is Windows share, and there is a demo, of course, a practical approach. So Windows uses SMB protocol for file sharing, and if you have shared or access anytime the remote folders or files over the Windows, then just do consider that they use the SMB protocol, and it authenticates a particular user by sending an NTLM hash. The NTLM hash will gonna later validate it within their destination server, of course, and if authenticated, the server shared files or folder will be revealed. So let's see with the practical approach. So for this, I'll be using one of my lab that I have created in past. So let me just quickly navigate to the same, and here we go. What I'm gonna do, I'll first start by creating my a demo server or SMB server within my Linux machine. Of course, the Kali Linux, probably you will be able to see it. And here we go. I'll just create one temporary location. Let's say mkdir talk cd into the stock folder, and I'll be using mpacket SMB server. So this is a Python based SMB server that works very well. I'm gonna add SMB to support because my destination client from which I'm gonna connect will require minimum SMB version 2. So that's the reason. Share name will be just a share, and let's say the location. I'll just add a dot, that means current location. So let me quick hit enter here. And let's try to connect to this remote share. The IP for my SMB server would be 10.0.0.17. That will going to connect. And here we go. There are multiple ways to connect network share. You can just use this URL bar, I would say, from your Explorer and add a machine IP address 10.0.0.17, right? The share name was share, and let's hit enter. It did work. I can see this empty folder. That's fair. That's fair enough. And now let's see how the authentication worked. And luckily, we get our logs logged. So if I go back to my VM, as you see here, someone did connected. Who connected? It says SQL user did connected to this particular SMB server, and this machine host name, and the next is this domain name, and the last is your NTLM v2 hash. Now this will going to validate it within the database or within this particular machine. However, I have set it up anonymous access, hence it was allowed. So if I specify a particular user, then they will require that to be added here. So that being said, let's just give it a try with few more accounts to get more understanding. Moving back to my RDP or the machine. Instead, this way I'll gonna just right click to this PC and let's say add network location, or probably add a network drive, map a network drive. Yes, this is the one. And I'm gonna say let's backslash 10.0.0.17 connect using different credential. I'm just hitting here. The share name was share, and let's finish it out. The username I'd like to use is admin with the password admin. It's fair. Domain if you wish to enter. Elsewhere it is also fair. I'll hit enter. It did work well. Now, if I navigate to my VM, the Linux machine, it will going to display the admin here. So the moral of the story here is how this network share works is they just use their NDLM v2 hash or v1 hash in the past, and they just share it with the destination server, and server will going to validate within their authentication database, and if found to be authorized or authenticated, then yeah, all set, and it will gonna display the particular share or folder. Other thing that I would like to add here is username and password. So you can probably supply, let me just quick check help menu for that. After assembly to support, I'll gonna add username. Let's say admin is what they or the client should specify, and password would be Rebensu. Be good, and let's hit enter. Now, server is running again, but the authentication entity are predefined here, which is admin and Robensive. Someone tried with a different username and password, they might fail. So let's give it a try with our Windows server. It's already disconnected. Let's try from current user 10.0.0.17 it was, and the share name was here. It asks for credential instead of showing that particular thing. However, if I navigate to my VM, it will display that what user trying to access that particular server. Of course, it failed because they haven't provided any credential, and initial stage with the username itself or username validation, it failed. So that's the reason it asks for a password. So let's write a password admin, and let's go with the Robban Sue. Hitting enter. Oh, sorry. Here. Backslash Urbansu. Oh, 10.0.0.17. Here. It was admin with the password Urbansu. But it's not configured with the domain. So probably it will going to fail. But let's just give it a try. I'm sure that it will gonna fail because of this domain thing. And yeah, here we go. You don't have permission to access this resource. So we can just understand that whenever this authentication works within this uh, SMB server, it share NTLMv2 hash. The reason behind this to put it is essential is to understand exploitation, which we're going to look through in the later on. So that being said, let's move back to our PPT. So Windows uses this SMB protocol for file sharing where client sends the NTLM-v2 hash to the server, and server will going to validate it within their authentication database, and if found authorized and authenticated, then it will going to reveal the share folders or files. That being said, let's move ahead with the next slide. So finally, we are with our first vulnerability, UNC hijacking or path injection, UNC path injection. The UNC is a universal naming convention or which is naming system used in Windows environment for accessing shared network folders and printers. The same what we used earlier, like backslash one IP address, whatever it is, with specified with the share name. Instead of that IP address, we can supply machine name, and this is what it uses, right? MSSQL is running as a service, and MSSQL has the functionality to list folders or read write files to the disk. Now, if any program has the feature to read, write, or list down the files and folders in Windows environment. They can even list, view, or write network or remote folders. When it tries to lift down the remote or SMB share, it will going to use the same account which is being used to execute that particular service. So if that service is running through anti-authority system, then probably you'll get the machine IP, machine NTLM hash. If it is using a standard user, then you will get hash for that particular user itself. Using function like xp_tree, which will be the backend, we can try listing network share, which can result shared NTLM hash for the process user. Process user is the user through which that MSSQL service is running. It is a system, then you'll get a that particular machine NTLM hash. If it is something different than different user, then you'll get hash for the same. That NTLM v2 hash can either be relayed, or what you can do, of course, is to just try to crack that if it is possible. Let's take it with the practical approach, and for the practical, I have already designed a lab which you can, of course, impersonate. So this lab DC01 or database server is something that I have already built and created a series for everyone to just go through the same. So by just following this Rebensive MSSQL attacks for red teamers, there are 3 videos which are uploaded. First one will gonna give you Active Directory environment setup. Second one, MSSQL instance setup, and the third one, the misconfigurations within the MSSQL to exploit. So this will going to help you building all the basic or concept that is required. And for exploitation, what I'm gonna use is my own tool, MSSQL-Attacker. You can get the latest release from the releases tab, and I have already uploaded to my environment, Active Directory environment. So if I navigate to this folder, C and Rebensive, I'll get it here. So the first vulnerability that we'll be exploiting is, of course, this UNC injection, path injection. And let's execute my tool first. MSSQL-Attacker is a tool that I have developed with help of course, this OSEP learning modules. And I have designed it such a way to attack all the possible, not all, but most possible attack scenario for the MSSQL service. And the scenario that we will be focusing on is, of course, our UNC path injection. And in order to list all the different attack that could be possible here, we're gonna just have to add either CLI version, which you can use, or use all these starting uh, parameters. And for the GUI, it's quite easy. So I'll go with the CLI for now. So CLI hyphen T, which is required for a target, and my machine name, of course, which is DBSRV01, and hyphen A. If I don't specify any attack name, it will going to list all the different possible attacks that are part of this particular tool. And one of it is UNC path inject. Hope you can see it here. So let's give it a try. Hyphen A. I'll just copy and paste a particular one, paste it. So it requires some additional arguments, and for that, let's just hit enter. It should ask us, or it should return saying that something is missing. And here we go. It says missing hyphen L host or attacker IP address. So let me just clear my screen as I get some visual errors. Hyphen L, probably it was. And IP would be 10.0.0.17. Before moving ahead, let me quick check whether my VM is running. It seems to be. Let's just clear everything and start from the beginning. Should be good. RDP here. Hitting enter. Something is wrong. Of course, the CLS has been appended. Enter. What it says, it first authenticated, authentication success, request sent to particular machine with the standard 0.0.0.7, which we can check by just navigating to our VM. And here we go. So what I found is the particular user, of course, this DBSRV01, and the second one was admin. Probably this admin is the one which we have used in past, so it is the same sending again and again, and this is the one which we got. So this is the particular machine NTLM-v2 hash which we can relay in order to exploit it further. We're not gonna move ahead with those type of exploitation as we are dedicated to MSSQL. So what happens here, we specify or we use XP directory or similar commands or similar functions within the MSSQL server, and we try to list or we try to write a file in a shared folder. And when the shared folder is being accessed using SMB, it will gonna, of course, share the NTLM-v2 hash. If it is an older system, then NTLM-v1. And NTLM-v1 can be straight away used for pass the hash attack. So that being said, let's move ahead with the slide part. So let's move with the next slide, as we are already aware with this UNC path injection or UNC hijacking, both what we can call as. The second vulnerability here is privilege escalation with the impersonation. So MS SQL Service itself has authentication and authorization feature, which can be used to have multiple users and roles. Same how your web application has admin and user roles, MS SQL has those type of roles. And access to low privileged user over an MS SQL instance won't be that critical as how the privileged user could have. We know that in our web application testing, we do get a privilege escalation vulnerabilities where we from the standard user we do the functionality, execute the functionality of administrator. Similarly, in MSSQL service, MSSQL server, such vulnerabilities could be there. Not the vulnerabilities, but misconfiguration. So impersonate is an attribute which can be assigned to a user within MS SQL Service. What happens usually is a developer may hire another developer, or in an organization there could be multiple developers, multiple multiple this MS SQL server managers, right? So they might not share their password to each other. However, they just allow or enable impersonation for that particular user. So without sharing their credential, other user can impersonate themselves in order to perform various activities. So there could be a number of use cases. It is just exploitation and we'll just stick to it. So impersonate is an attribute within the MS SQL, and that can be assigned to a particular user within MS SQL, of course. And when it is assigned, what could be possible is, of course, a user can impersonate B user, and B user may impersonate C user, and C user can be system admin. And when the user is system admin, they can perform various attacks, including remote command execution. So privilege is often given to low privilege dev for doing high privilege task without giving high privilege user credential. This is quite common in most cases, but yeah, there could be other possible reasons. So the first here is impersonating system admin, and that is considered as a privilege escalation. When impersonation is assigned to a sysadmin account, an attacker can impact critically and result a remote command execution. Using a XPCMD shell, XPCMD shell is a function which can help us to execute command. Same how XP-Dirty was able to list shares folder or the local folders within the MS SQL instance, right? So that's being said, let's just go with the demo part. Moving back to my tool here, instead of going with this UNC path inject, of course, what I'm gonna do, I'll check for impersonation. So mark, this is what I want to mark. Oops, and paste it here. Check impersonation. What it's gonna do, it will gonna check for possible impersonation. And here we go. Perfect. What it tells, there are impersonatable user, and the first is SA. Second one is, of course, the domain account, which is robensive-labs/SQL admin, right? So we can impersonate those user with our MSSQL attacker tool. There are graphical issues what I'm facing here, but I hope now it's visible. So what you can use is you can use this impersonate and impersonate SA in order to perform those impersonation things. So first we're gonna try impersonating this SA account, and second we're gonna try this SQL admin. So that's being said, let's just give it a try. So again, MSSQL attacker, CLI target database server. Attack would be just to get info. I don't want to do any attack. I want just impersonation. So impersonate SA, impersonate SA should be good. So what I'm gonna do, it will gonna impersonate SA first before execution of any attack. Ignore this issue with this description. Okay, so what it says, impersonation failed. I'm still SQL user when I try impersonating SA account. Let's try with the second account that we have seen. So impersonate -I user, the user that you want to be impersonated, and I want second one. I'll just going to mark here. Ignore this visual issues. It's not in my hand, of course. Rubensive-labs and SQL admin. This is the user that I want to be impersonated. So let's hit enter. It says impersonation success. That's great. But this user is still not sysadmin. However, we see that based on the name, the current user was SQL user, the next user was SQL admin, and we can successfully impersonate SQL admin. So probably SQL admin will gonna have access to impersonate this SA account. Let's validate that. So after this impersonate with iUser SQL admin, we can impersonate SA. So let's give it a try. First, it says impersonation success with SQL admin. Second, it says SA. And now the user is member of sysadmin role. Now we got the privileged access. So the moral of the story here is when a user have impersonation attribute, the low privilege user may impersonate that user in order to perform attack behalf of that particular user, or information gathering behalf of that particular user, or executing any query behalf of that particular user. That being said, let's move ahead with the PPT part. So the vulnerability first we have seen is UNC path injection. Second is privilege escalation through impersonate and impersonate SA. So how this works, how my tool can simplify that particular task of impersonating multiple user. The third vulnerability here is impersonating database owner. So what is this the database owner? So there might be multiple databases where where you want a particular developer to have full access. So what you can do is you can just assign this attribute to DBO, which is a default user for all the database. And if you assign to particular database owner, what they can do is they can execute any queries for on that particular database owner privilege. So let's say SA, or let's say MSDB is a database for which this SA account is the owner, and this DBO has impersonate attribute. Then attacker can impersonate that DBO in order to privilege escalate to SA. Let's be said, let's just go with the practical approach and it will make more sense for sure. So moving back to my RDP screen, here we go. Just a clear screen and should be good. So instead this impersonate, it will be impersonate DBO. So let me just add help probably. Um, MSSQL Attacker. It is impersonate DBO, right? And it does not require any additional argument probably. So should be good because the DBO is optional. So impersonate DBO. If you know the particular database, you can just specify elsewhere default it should work. Hitting enter, it found trustworthy database impersonation as DBO succeed, and now the user is SA and member of sysadmin role. So it found a particular database that has this impersonation enabled for the DBO, and it impersonated that DBO and became SA. So this is another privilege escalation, possible privilege escalation within MS SQL instance. Moving back to PPT. When impersonation is assigned to a database owner that we have seen, sysadmin owned database attacker can perform command execution. So it is something when it is for sysadmin, attacker can do the command execution, of course. So how this command execution is still pending with our case. So let's just give it a check with the practical approach. So moving back to my RDP screen, clearing my screen here. First of all, I'll just try with the standard account and I'll try to toggle the CMD shell. By default, the CMD shell is disabled. So we have to enable that, of course. So pasting it here, everything seems to be fine. And let's give it a try. Okay. So it failed with the standard user because we are not sysadmin at all. This visual issues. Okay. What I can do is I can give it a try with impersonate DBO probably hyphen impersonate DBO, because post to this DBO impersonation we were able to be the SA account, right? So let's give it a try. It found a trustworthy database, it impersonated as a DBO, the current value in use for the CMD shell is 0, and now it changed it to 1, and XP shell is enabled. Perfect. It worked, it's just a visual issues. Now, instead of this toggle CMD shell, we can use exec CMD, and that should be fine. -C, and the command you want to be executed. You want to verify what is the value in use. Of course, this command execution requires sysadmin too. So impersonate DBO, and here we go. First, we're gonna impersonate that DBO, which is SA, and validate this CMD shell, and here we go. It did executed this particular command. If you want to execute any other command, it should work. Let's say ipconfig Perfect. Here we get this output in our visual, right? So should be fine. Similarly, instead of this DBO, what I can do is impersonate. First, we impersonate this Rubensu hyphen labs slash SQL admin. I user is what I'm missing here. And impersonate SA. The same attack that we did in vulnerability 2. It first impersonated SQL admin, then impersonated SA, checked the value for this CMD shell and executed our command. So with the sysadmin account, we can execute OS command and my tool does it very well. Let's give it a try with the GUI ones. The MSSQL GUI DBSR v01 and here we go. With the help of this first, I'll get information about current user. It says SQL user and we are not sysadmin at all. Second, we can go and check impersonation, of course. So impersonation check. It validates and lists down what are the user allowed to impersonate. I can impersonate with the fourth value, of course. Let's just go directly with the fifth, impersonate DBO. It found trustworthy database, impersonation succeed. And now if I check information, my current user became SA. Now I can do any activity with this SA. If I want this command shell, then I can just say seventh number and it should work. Let's wait. Who am I? IP config, host name, and that's it. This is how this GUI version works. If I just hit exit, it will gonna exit and moving back to the main menu, right? So that being said, let's move back to our PVD. The next vulnerability I would like to add here is link server and RCE. The tool also offers link server command execution. Often we found this production and UAT databases are linked to each other with the linked functionality, of course. When link server is configured to connect with sysadmin credential, an attacker can log into the main server with the low privilege user and execute commands over link server using XP CMD shell, not the dirty. There is typo. Just ignore that. So that being said, let's just go with the practical and we'll move back to our PVD part. Let me quick fix this dirty thing parallelly. The shell and should be good. Moving back to my RDP and should be good. Visual errors again here. Perfect. Instead of this exec CMD, I'll first check what are the link server. So in order to validate the link server, there is a- another attack which will going to check for link server. So where's that check link server here? Selecting base and should be good. It says that there is another server which is linked and that is DC1. The one which you see first, it's our own. It is not something we are really interested into. But the second one, DC01, is the one which is linked. Again, visual errors. Good now. Now, as we know that which is the link server, we can give it a try to toggle CMD shell for the link server. And in order to validate whether we are sysadmin or not. So that being said, let's just copy the particular attack paste it, toggle linked CMD shell, and ls for specifying a linked server. The linked server is DC01, and let's hit enter. It says linked server DC01 value in use. Earlier it was 0, then it changed to 1. And linked server XPCMD shell toggle successful. When this XPCMD shell is enabled, we can execute commands. Right? So for executing command, there is another attack, which is exec link CMD. Oops. Pasting -c for specifying your command. And let's go with the command like mkdir c:/Robensio. It will be totally blind output as we're not gonna get the response at all from the link server. So we need to validate manually. So I'm moving back to my DC. Let me quick log in. And let's verify whether there is any Robensio folder or not. Currently, no, there is not. So let's give it a try. Hitting enter. I'm missing link server name. Oh, I forgot. Here, hyphen link server will be DC01. Should be good. We're gonna verify what type of or what is the value of this XPCMD shell and executed the command. Now let's verify DC01. And here we go. The Robinson folder has been successfully created. As it's a blind execution, we cannot get, but yeah, it ensures that your command is successfully executed. So that being said, let's move back to our PPT part and closure, of course. So often again, link server are the server that are interconnected, MS SQL server and different MS SQL server. And to interact with each other, sometimes they might have to set up a credential. And when those credentials are for the admin role or sysadmin accounts, then we can just execute commands over the link server using my tool, of course. So that being said, let's just finish it with our ending ceremony. So again, this is the end of this talk, and you can watch more educational videos from my YouTube channel. I do little posts, and just to keep you updated with my Instagram, you can reach out to me. And of course, you'll get all the links when you reach out to my YouTube or Instagram towards me. And again, thankful to Mystico owner, and everyone who's member of the Mystico, and of course, the most important, you guys who are watching till this time. So, last but not the least, I'm moving back to my RDP screen, and you can go download this release of this MSSQL attack. If you stuck somewhere, there is a wiki for the same. You can click on this wiki, attacker guide, and you'll get this entire possible like use cases for the same. So that's the last. That is all. See you next time. So good day, all.